Welcome to the Ultimate Gamer Podcast, a show that features conversations with the trailblazers, thought leaders, decision makers, and investors who are defining the gaming and esports space. On the Ultimate Gamer Podcast, we take a journey into this dynamic industry and start to decode and reveal who and what's making news. It's about connecting, and it's about sharing the stories and vision of the people who make gaming and esports a global phenomenon. And now, please welcome your host, student of the game and connected to the esports community, Tommy Knapp.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tommy Knapp, and this is an all-new episode of the All About the Game podcast presented by The Ultimate Gamer. On today's show, I have a conversation with Steve Blickensderfer, a senior associate at Carleton Fields and co-chair of their esports and electronic gaming practice. He hosts the LAN Party Lawyer podcast, which addresses various topics regarding the legal side of gaming. He grew up a gamer primarily playing real-time strategy games like Command and Conquer and StarCraft. Steve has a personal focus on privacy and cybersecurity, but oversees various aspects of the legal landscape in esports. He and I discuss topics including intellectual property law in gaming, contracts in traditional sports versus the esports, and current hot topics in the space. We both believe in the potential of the esports scene in South Florida and share a desire to connect the South Florida space to help spur development in the region. Later in the episode, Steve discussed some of the legal challenges due to the global nature of the gaming industry and the evolution of legal work in the video gaming space. He talked about the massive mobile gaming market, the growth of competitive collegiate scene, and how he's diving deep into these conversations on his own esports and gaming podcast. Please join me now for my conversation with Steve Blickensderfer. So, tell me a little bit, a lot of times when we first start talking about esports and gaming, we want to know about the history of the individuals that are involved in the space. So, Like when you look at gaming, did you grow up playing whatever Pac-Man, Donkey Kong games like that? Is that how you started into gaming and esports, and then just go through the history of then your growth into the law arena? Yeah.
Sure. No, well, first, thank you for having me on.
Of course, man.
I got started playing the NES, Genesis. So I'm kind of that first generation.
What's it, NES was it?
Nintendo Entertainment System. Sega Genesis. I started really competitively playing video games for my first computer. I enjoy building computers.
Okay.
I got started in that in high school.
Wow.
Putting those things together, playing Age of Empires to Command and Conquer. So you can see I'm in the RTS genre.
Yeah.
So eventually got to StarCraft 2. StarCraft 2 is when I really started paying attention to the esports scene.
Okay.
And
you mean the competitive gaming scene? Because esports didn't even really, that term, didn't even exist yet.
No, if anything, a little known fact about me is I created a competitive clan. We called them clans back then, playing Battle for Middle-earth and Zero Hour. And we would congregate on certain websites and forums.
Yeah.
And we would, all of a sudden, a bunch of people would put little acronyms or initials before their names when they're playing a particular game.
Right.
And so that would be your clan.
Right.
You would go represent your clan in the different, in-game chat rooms. And so, you'd ask anyone want to play a 2v2, 3v3, whatever, 1v1. And then eventually you would jump in a room with that person, you'd play, and then you'd record who won on a certain website, Clan Wars or whatever it was. So that's actually my experience.
When was that? What was that?
Oh, this is like 2006, 2004, 5, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So well before what we have going on here, before CSGO, before all that.
Yeah.
But the RTS genre goes back a ways. But then I went to school, right? So then I went to college, I went to law school, and I lost touch with being able to keep really involved in the competitive scene.
Where did you go to college and law school?
College USF,
Okay.
so in Tampa, UF for law.
Okay.
And then I made my way back to Miami.
Okay.
To Miami.
But you're from New York originally, you said?
New York originally, all my college
The city
in Florida, Long Island.
Long Island, okay.
Long Island, New York, came down here to Florida and been in Miami for about.
How'd you make that decision to come to
years.
USF? Was it USF first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was a family.
I got to get out of New York.
No,
it's too
no.
cold,
It was a family that moved down.
Oh, okay.
So I ended up coming down to Miami after law school because I was looking for firms. Found Carleton Fields where I currently am practicing.
Yeah.
And to kind of go into that segment, which is my parlay into practicing in an area that touches on esports and video games.
Right.
Obviously, it's my passion: video games, building computers, all that. So I didn't want to lose it, but I would start off in litigation at Carleton Fields, and eventually wanted to make what I did at work turn my hobby into what I'm doing, so it didn't feel like work.
Right.
So when I'm reading articles, I'm reaching out, doing marketing endeavors or whatever, I felt like I was just hanging out with friends.
Right.
And that's what I ultimately shifted and said, what is going on in the industry? What are their legal needs? What are their legal services that they need, like the holes that need to be plugged?
Right.
That's how I got started. Identifying about over almost 2 years now at the firm, creating their esports and electronic gaming practice.
Okay.
And from that, one client begets two clients,
Yeah, yeah.
and then eventually form a little practice.
Yeah.
I compare it to having like a basketball team where I'm the basketball coach,
Sure.
and I have a deep bench of players that I pull from various groups.
Okay.
Because we're a full service firm, so we do class action defense, securities, employment. So we litigate, we do contract negotiation and creation and compliance and regulatory work. Okay. So I can pull anybody from that, and I'll be able to explain what the industry speak and translate so that I can bring someone on and make it sort of seamless
that
process.
time between UF and you going to Carleton,
Yeah.
that time right there, had you kind of gone back into gaming, or you were
I
gaming
never
yourself personally?
Yeah, so always casually gaming
Okay.
and always building computers along the way.
Right.
We'll go on the Steam sale, buy a bunch of games that I missed out on for discount bargain bin prices, and then I'll play them eventually.
Yeah.
I do like also the shooters, all the Call of Duties. I'd play those. Sometimes on the console. I had an Xbox,
Right.
but most of the time on the PC.
Okay.
And I remember in law school, I would have days where I'd play 13 hours just playing StarCraft online,
right.
just because I couldn't kick the habit. It
Right.
never went away. It was just I had to dedicate time to other things for a while.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of time that goes on, and I'm trying to get like in your head where you saw the opportunity, because gaming has been around 50 years, like we say 50 years or so. Competitive gaming, you could say it started 72 with Stanford, but really it's gotten in the last 10 or 20 years, and then esports really the last 5 years maybe is kind of like how it's all grown. You said you started this practice specifically at the law firm in esports and gaming like about 2 years ago.
Right.
So was it really esports and just becoming all the headlines that you were seeing, or like, okay, we really need to get involved in this now?
No, this was actually more growing up in the space,
Okay.
Making relations in the space, having friends in the space. They all of a sudden got to the maturity and development where they needed legal services,
Right.
and I realized I'm in a position I could help.
Right.
So it starts there, and then from there, it's like, you know what? There is an opportunity here to grow this, and not just to do one-off work here and there.
Right.
And so once I realized, wait a minute, there could be something here. I was like, all right, well, what's the current state of the law as it relates to video games and esports right now?
Right.
And so that's actually what when I created the podcast, Land Party Lawyers, with my longtime gamer friend Nick.
Okay.
So we decided to let's create like a seasonal podcast, because we still have a lot of work obligations. We can't do it full time. So let's do a seasonal podcast where each episode is like an evergreen issue about something, right?
Okay.
What's unique in the space that intersects between law and business and video games.
Yep.
And the first one that we thought of was loot boxes.
Okay.
What are the laws that relate to loot boxes, that regulate them, that restrict them as it relates to various jurisdictions? And so from that issue, we turned into IP, into employment issues.
Yeah.
Before you know it, we were identifying all these unique issues that are really unique to the space, and that we wanted to shed some light on, educate everybody at the same time, and to just kind of bring some conversation around it. Talk to some fascinating folks about it. Actually, that's last year I was podcasting at Ultimate Gamer Miami, which is why this event's so near and dear to my heart. And talked to Steve, and so it's a lot of fun.
So over the course of the last 2 years, you've done that seasonally. How many podcasts do you do in a season?
So we started the podcast last year,
Okay.
And so we did one season a year.
Okay.
So if anything, maybe annually, but about 12 episodes in a season. We were doing it on a bi-monthly release, at least that first season, and we're in the middle of the second season right now.
Okay.
So.
So you're doing it now?
Yeah, still going on.
And are you doing it virtually, or?
Yeah, well, just audio only right now.
Okay.
Although it's always the goal to be able to do it visually as well with everybody in all their
What's
unique
your format?
locations.
Obviously, we know that there's a topic that you guys choose, an evergreen topic that you choose. It's you and one of the partners, or do you have somebody different on every time? Are you interviewing somebody?
Yeah, well, it was me and Nick for a while. Nick
Okay.
is transitioned out because he had a great opportunity. But I have other co-leaders of the practice group, so I just bring one of them in and we talk about various issues. So it's usually us kind of having a conversation about a particular issue,
Right.
and then we'll bring in somebody from the industry that relates to that particular issue. I've had people who headed up mobile game companies talking about the unique legal issues in the mobile game space, people on esports teams, IP holders, various people in the industry to kind of just how have you interacted with law? How does it relate to the things we've been talking about?
Yeah.
And what are your insights and what can you take away, or I guess give some practical advice to others that are struggling or maybe going through the same thing.
Yeah, and well, I say constantly, and it's the esports and gaming, and I don't care what industry you're in outside of esports and gaming,
Right.
But you should look at esports and gaming.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much opportunity there. So if you're an advertising agency, if you're an attorney, if you're in the medical field, go into esports and gaming because it's a huge industry that needs all of these services, right?
There's been a real need for, as the space has gotten an influx of cash and an influx of attention, and which is very much warranted because of all the amazing opportunities that are there, to at the same time have a level of maturity and development that it deserves. That way it can have a long-term sustainability. You don't want it to just kind of flare up and die.
Right.
What we like is that the organizations and the companies and the content creators that are entering the space to have and to kind of enter it with a mature mindset. This is a business. My team is a business. When I had my clan, I didn't treat it like a business. It was a hobby.
Right.
It was not something, and nobody made money on it.
Right.
But that's very much not the same way it is today.
Right.
You can tremendous opportunity to turn something that you love and that you do all the time into a job, but also your passion all at the same time. So the ideal situation for me as a lawyer is that I would be able to help somebody do it the right way.
Right.
Usually, if I'm entering into a situation with somebody, it's like, why do we need a lawyer? We're all friends here, and everyone has the best of intentions. Well, that's how business starts. Any other industry is just the same way, but it just takes one relationship breakdown to show you in a big way, to kind of show you why lawyers can be necessary and why they can be welcome, to set you up with a nice contract. Everybody thought out what the contingencies would be in case something went wrong. If you think it out in advance with someone who kind of anticipates what could go wrong in this particular situation, you'd be much better off. The industry would be much better off because you got better contracts out there, less people are taken advantage of. You want that. Right. We want that in the space, and that's why great opportunity for lawyers to have, or lawyers coming up maybe in law school that have this as their passion, to have an eye out for it when they're entering the workforce, or those who are, they game at night and they may do something they might not like during the day, to maybe shift focus and seek an opportunity for themselves as well.
Sure. Yeah. Well, man, I think it's absolutely critical, and I say that all the time. And when you think about law, the thing that's amazing, like if you are in products, or like these products we have here, you can do multiple products, right, for the esports and gaming industry. When you look at the legal field, the number of areas that need your professionalism, need your experience, are almost across the board. They're almost infinite. Right. So where are you finding right now? Probably give me like 3 to 5 of the top areas that either you're seeing people coming to you, or you see a need for people like yourself in this space. Because I've got a couple of my own that I know, because I've run across professional athletes, professional gamers that have not had representation on the contract side.
Sure.
And I see that happening a lot, and they're not understanding, because and I keep saying, like, a traditional pro sports athlete grows up and they're kind of being groomed the entire way up. Right. So a LeBron James or a Steph Curry, or go to any professional sport and find an athlete. They know it's very common for them to have representation as they go into a contract with whatever team they're playing for. right? These gamers a lot of times don't. They think they can just read their contracts and they can just fend for themselves. They don't realize it. So I see that being one of the big areas that we need representation. Where I mean, and you can talk about some examples there, and then some other areas.
Player representation in contract negotiation is a hot area, and it's definitely an area of need, because if you are going from a traditional sports contract and then you're also then looking at a gamer contract, there are some terms in a sports contract that are very important and that sports lawyers know what to look for. They've crafted them every which way to Sunday, and they know the ins and outs. Then you go to a gamer contract, and the gamer lawyers, as they're coming up and becoming gamer lawyers, they've drafted them in a certain way because we've been learning about things that have been working and things that haven't been working. And so we'll fine-tune certain provisions. We know which provisions are the hot areas of negotiation, so we can work on them. That skill, that knowledge doesn't just necessarily carry over, and that's why it's always a good idea to have someone that knows what they're looking for in a particular area or industry, right? Because a contract is not a contract. You know, in different industries, there's different things you're kind of looking out for.
Yeah, like 80% of it might be the same, but that 20%
but maybe
is the part you got to worry about.
Maybe the IP rights in a player agreement wasn't as important as it is in the video game space, because when you're creating content and when you're bringing your intellectual property to the table, depending on the org, it just, there's different.
Well, I'll give you an example that I read about the other day, and you probably know about this case. I don't know. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. But the 2K, NBA 2K. So you've got the 2K game, and LeBron's one of the characters in the game, and in the game, his image and likeness is there, and he's got tattoos on his body. And so the tattoo artist that actually had done the tattoos sued 2K, because they put those tattoos on his body in the game. Like, to me, I'm like, that's I don't know. I don't think they won. But
IP issues in the video game space. That's actually been the OG of legal issues in the space is the IP rights. You think about it. Video games, it's a digital asset. It used to be, there used to be a physical component to it, but you're not really going to a store and buying the hard copy of the games anymore. So IP law has really developed over a longer period of time in the video game space, more than other legal issues. So that has actually been, that case is a pretty famous case recently that came out. There's a bunch of the Fortnite dance cases. Those are following some pretty, I guess, well-developed areas of law. But there's all these cutting-edge issues like the player agreement and negotiation. We have just begun to scratch the surface on what that will look like. What's the, because there have been very few cases where someone's challenged a gamer agreement. The Tfue case is one of the often referred to examples because it's one of the only examples where someone has actually gone to court and said, I'm challenging this.
Where are we on that? We're still
they're at the summary judgment stage, which is basically before you get to trial, it tests the case to see does it have enough evidence to continue. Because if it doesn't have enough, if it's like one-sided, the law is clear, the facts are clear, then you can decide the case without a trial. That's where that case is currently, and it's but yeah, no,
that's been going on for a little while now.
It's been going on for over a year, and cases tend to develop. It usually takes a while, so that's just another thing. Having someone on your team that has that litigation experience, they could tell you. Cases take a while to go through court. These are the costs that you're looking at if you were to litigate. Always something. What they'll say if you're a litigator, you tend to write. You tend to go to writing contracts, or at least know what to look for to write a contract, because you know how to challenge it later, or you kind of have a tendency to look at certain things. But all right, so player agreements, that's one thing. Another thing would be compliance and regulatory advice, and that can be in any. There's a few different subsets of this, so let's pick on one. Let's do the collegiate space. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. The NCAA has decided they don't want to touch it right now. They might decide later, hey, we're here now, and everybody else is going to have to deal with it, which is going to, we'll see what happens. But
we'll see what happens, and it's interesting, too, because Florida just passed the fact that traditional sports athletes can now use their likeness and image and actually make money from that. So I thought that was one of the reasons why the NCAA was just kind of staying way far away, because gamers can actually make money when they go to college. If they're,
almost easier than a player on a team can.
So I thought they were like, oh my God, if we get involved in that, it's just going to be a nightmare. But now that you're starting to see traditional athletes can monetize, not from their performance on the field,
Right.
Right. But from their likeness and image, like with some kind of deal with Coca-Cola or Pepsi or something like that.
Yeah, and then you consider also look at it from the perspective of the schools. They have to comply with Title IX and various other laws and regulations, and so they need to know if I start supporting our team because it's so popular, everybody wants to play Fortnite or Rocket League or whatever. What does that mean? What impact does that have on our supporting, hockey or football? Does it have an impact? It might have unintended consequences, and that's what bringing in a lawyer who understands what to look for helps.
Right.
And so that's compliance is.
So the NCAA's probably spent a lot of time talking to their attorneys.
Well, that's actually the NCAA has. They've got probably enough on their plate that they decided let's just wait on the sidelines for now. But you have other organizations that have stepped up and said, I'd like to create a league and have schools represented in this league of a certain caliber or just anybody and provide a platform through which we'll have people compete. So we actually had an episode where we had Tyler Schroet from EGF on, and we talked about his organization. But that's just one of many. And, it's just an opportunity for folks to step in.
I've seen him a bunch recently. He's been posting a bunch. He's got some good stuff going on.
Yeah, no, it's just the opportunity is there.
Electronic Gaming Federation,
right. And I think they had some partnership with Disney recently.
I saw some good announcements.
But that's just to show that compliance area has been hot. Yeah. So how to kind of wade through that has been interesting. And it's not only just on the college level; it's all on the high school level. Yeah. Scholastic esports. So
when you see those things, I mean, you're aware of these things, and you see, okay, this area is an area. Then do you then proactively reach out to some of these organizations and say, hey, listen, if you guys need some help, we can help in this area, or right now is it so busy that people are just able to find you guys?
I think it depends on what area it is. For me, if I identify an area that I'm interested in, I'd like to develop an area of where that people understand. Hey, you can call on me if you ever need something. I'll usually start by I'm not going to ask. I'm going to give, and so I try to give value or benefit. And so that for me started with the podcast, starts with articles. So I try to write things. I try to get my name out there. I try to, connect in the community and connect people. Yeah. Hey, you have a problem? This guy's got some solution. It might help you. It might not, but, connect them. And I found that that's been a good way for me in this industry to develop a practice because it's not, I'm trying to create it from good roots, right? And come at it with a perspective. I'm here for a long time. I'd like to really connect folks and to whether you use me or you use someone else. The esports law and video game law community is actually not that big, and so we know each other. And so go with that guy because he's great. He'll take care of you, and that's kind of the way I think. That's at least how I approach it. Yeah. So it's been
and it feels, and again, this word, I think I say it on every single podcast, right? But authenticity, when you kind of come from, first of all, you are a gamer, you understand it, so you can kind of speak the language legitimately. Right. You can get into a conversation. But now, if you are providing value first and you're giving first, you're coming from an authentic space. You're not asking, or taking.
Right.
So I think I think it's a great strategy. And I love the fact that you guys have the podcast and it's specifically geared around esports and gaming because that's one of the reasons why we have these conversations, to share stories.
That's right.
But it's also to create more awareness about what's going on in the space and educate people.
Right.
So we talked about compliance, we talked about player contracts, a couple other areas.
Let's see. IP is always going to be a big issue. Yep. And so there's trademark, which is your like your brand, Ultimate Gamer, and maybe a slogan. Copyright, which is your creative thoughts, kind of memorialized in whether it's on a piece of paper or in a script, in a code or something. And then you have patents, you have trade secrets. So as you can imagine, when you're creating material, content, games, or playing the games and streaming, always going to have IP issues. I mean, just recently we had the DMCA takedowns on Twitch that caused everybody to be in an uproar because some people lost their livelihood. Some people got 3 strikes in one weekend.
Right.
And per Twitch's code of conduct, 3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah.
So dealing or helping folks deal with IP issues will never go away.
Right.
That'll always be an issue. Some of them are more mature than others in terms of their IP because they protect it. That's, if you think about it, we're in that industry. We've heard this before, where someone owns the football, and so that's IP ownership, and so that'll always be important and a need that people have, and so that's why it was important for me to identify our best IP folks and have them readily available to help out. Same with the other stuff, whether it's contract drafting and negotiation, and then if need rises, to have litigation folks ready as well. So my area of focus has been and always, and will be for the foreseeable future, has a lot been on privacy and cybersecurity.
Okay.
And so this is an area that might not be hot right now, but mark my words, Tommy, in a couple, and maybe a year from now, this industry will continue to see how important it is.
But privacy is hot.
It is, right?
But
But I'm speaking as it relates to the esports and video game
Okay.
space. So you see privacy as being, it's absolutely hot right now for everybody else. I agree.
Right.
And I've been preaching it's hot. It needs to be a greater concern for folks who are taking in data that are not yet appreciating the regulation that's coming or that's out there, because it's great. Esports is hot. Esports is, but or video games, whatever. But if you're not also appreciating the data that you're taking in or how you're securing the data, you don't want to be the one caught flat-footed
Right.
On the wrong side of a breach,
Right.
or you're taking in data you didn't appreciate might be personal information, and you're not properly putting in the measures to protect it, to make sure that you're doing what you need to not get called out by a regulator.
Right.
So that's something I've been really passionate about recently.
Right.
So that's the stuff that I usually get involved in probably the most out of all the stuff I do.
Wow. So on your team, like, you've got a team, so you're a gamer, right? And so when you bring these other people in that are experts, are there anybody else on your team that, like, you guys have created an internal Carlton Fields clan? You know what I mean? Like,
we have tinkered with the idea of playing Rocket League at the office,
Okay.
and actually that might still be something we do, because it's just such an easy game for
yeah,
anybody.
it's
not
easy
offensive
to,
at
right,
all.
and it's not easy to be really good at it.
Right.
But
Right,
you
and
can
I'll
kinda
give you
go-
an example.
Yeah.
Last year, the Entertainment Software Association, the ESA in DC, which is the lobbyist for the industry, they had a day on the Hill with representatives' aides, and they played Rocket League.
Okay.
And so it was like, the representatives from Florida and Maryland playing against Wisconsin and whatever. I just thought it was wonderful. It was a great idea, and they chose Rocket League to be the game.
Yeah.
So we'll eventually have.
Was it a tournament? Or was it just?
I don't know. It was like a one-day event. I don't know
yeah.
if they were keeping tabs on who's going to ultimately.
But I bet you
win.
people who have played it before were probably good. Probably got competitive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You
no,
wanna win
but
if you like-
it's cool because, and I've been on an NPR podcast with the head of the ESA. They're very in touch with, they care a lot about making sure that the industry is not overly regulated. I think maybe intelligently regulated would
Right.
be the best way to put it. And I'm not speaking for the ESA, but I just get a sense from them that they're trying their best to make sure that they're not getting unfairly singled out. And that was happening a little bit last year with the WHO saying, playing video games is addictive behavior is bad. We want to avoid that. And then this year coming out with the pandemic, saying play more video games to avoid going out and being healthy.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how that kind of came back around.
It was interesting. That was interesting. But that was one of those that I could understand. Like when they said it, because there's behaviors, right? There's potential patterns there, and I think that was some of what they were trying to say. And then with what happened with the pandemic, taking your mind and all your fears and your concerns off of COVID-19 and the corona, and spending some time socializing with people. Like I kind of understood it.
Right.
I don't think it was like a flip flop.
Right.
It kind of made sense to me. There's other things that sometimes that I don't really.
They're not
understand.
necessarily contradictory, but there's some of it that
Right.
is.
When the way that it came out, it was like, wait a second, 8 months ago you said this,
Right.
and now.
Right. No, I
Yeah,
get it.
yeah.
No. I think what I was ultimately trying to get at was I think there's a lot of good that's coming out from a professional side of video games that doesn't oftentimes get attention.
Right.
And that maybe it deserves a little bit more of a spotlight on.
Right.
And so, if anything, maybe our podcast helped out on it. episodes like this of your podcast certainly help on it.
Yeah.
And so I totally encourage it and enjoy seeing that.
What I would love to see, and I'll introduce you to some of the universities if you don't already have these relationships, but I've been talking about the educational side of things, right?
Yeah.
And having these conversations.
And we've talked a little bit about that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like, and again, I just had blockchain on. We talked about Atlanta, and I know like Todd Harris at High Res Studios is working together with Georgia Tech,
Yep.
and Georgia Tech is building out curriculum,
Yep.
and some of the other colleges and universities are. The experts in the local areas,
Yeah,
the university should lean on them
totally.
for some of that expertise. So like Johnson & Wales, Barry, University of Miami, all these that are now starting these esports programs on a competitive side and on a club side, but then on the curriculum as well. Have you guys created any relationships like that yet? And if not, is that something you'd like really look forward to where, okay, now they're building out a curriculum and we need somebody from the legal field to come in and really be an expert? Because again, a lot of these universities and colleges, these people are super smart at a high level, but they don't know that much about what's going on in esports and gaming.
Yeah. Yes, we've established relationships with UM. UM's got a great relationship with our firm.
Great.
But I've been in touch with the guys there in terms of being a source of support. I actually gone to the school and talked with some students on some related issues whenever a legal issue came up and I was kind of operating in an advisory role for the program. And so that's something that I've been involved in, but I'd like to get involved in more. I think that I totally agree with you. I think that I've always seen such tremendous opportunity for South Florida in the esports side, right? So we're going to have the local segment of the episode now. I think that there's just we're in a tinderbox. It just requires a few of the key ingredients to come together, and then you're going to have an explosion. I mean, what's happening in Atlanta right now is amazing, and they're going to continue to explode. They have that support, and they have a swell of enthusiasm from the local community leaders, and that's wonderful. And I hope it happens
also on a statewide
here.
basis.
Right, and a statewide, right. So I would, Florida's got tremendous talent. We've got resources here from I-4 pretty much down. I mean, it's tremendous, and even maybe in the panel, I just don't know, but I would love to see it continue to gel and mature and take shape. I think we're going to get there. It's happened a little slower than I thought it would, but I think we'll get there.
I think what you just said, I love that tinderbox analogy because I that's the way I feel. Like I came from the Miami Marlins, and when I got into space, I wanted to surround myself with leaders. And what I did with the Marlins was create basically a coalition, bring people together, get a return on your investment from bringing these business leaders together. So when I got into this space, I saw the same thing. We're kind of there right now. I really feel like we're there. Yourself, your law firm. We talk about Alienware and Origin PC, and talk about Ghost Punch. You talk about all these universities. Now it's just a matter of let's get together.
Right.
And I just talked about that with Marcus because he's saying the same thing over in Tampa. He's done some of that over in Tampa. Right. But now, and especially in today's day and age, sometimes it's hard for us to do what we're doing right now. And again, I thank you, appreciate you for coming on. But with Zoom and all of these technologies, really you can, from home, we can all jump on, and we can have 8 or 10 or 12 of us and start doing this on a monthly basis. And I'm going to start, doing. I mean, you just inspired me to let's actually.
I feel like we really need to.
The pieces are in place, but they're just scattered on the table.
True. It needs the glue, and it's not easy to be the glue because oftentimes you're the one that's just exerting a tremendous amount of effort and you're not seeing a lot of return. But we really do have some special folks here and tremendous resources, and the geography really makes it work. I mean, we're the bridge to Latin America, and there's tremendous resources and potential and stuff going on down there. I mean, we've got platforms that distribute digital content, games that cater to Central and South America, and it was cool when I was talking to I forget the guy's name, but we're talking about they have specials that relate to like Day of the Dead or certain things that are their unique cultural holidays down there, and the guys here in Miami, right? Like, so there's some tremendous things that we could do here, unique things, but things that others are doing elsewhere. Like there should be, when you're talking about the top places where esports and video games are hot, right? Obviously LA, obviously New York, Atlanta is in the conversation now, Austin, but Miami should be there too, or South Florida should be in that conversation. And I feel like it's just a matter of time before we say, of course. Florida is.
I think we just talked about. So I love the South American analogy though, because I've been reading a lot recently about Free Fire, which is a game that's huge, like in Brazil. It's massive. I haven't heard.
Is it mobile?
Yeah, it's a mobile game.
So that's another thing. is there, and I talked about this on our mobile games episode, is that there is in emerging markets, mobile games are just taking off, and there's tremendous opportunity. If you're just only in North America or you're only in a certain region of North America, you're going to miss out on what else is happening, because video games is global. Esports is global. You guys know this. Yeah. But people who are just getting into the space might not appreciate that how global this is. And that's what actually the unique challenge for a lawyer is. Everything is on the table. If you are selling your games all over the world, well, you may be, in a world of hurt if you're not prepared for all the regulatory headaches that come with that. Yeah. So, that's why it's always a good idea to have someone that kind of appreciates, if you are going to have a talent team in Europe, are you prepared to comply with European regulations as it pertains to IP or employment or data, which has been a big area for me. Or let's talk about Asia, because that's a huge market. Yeah. So all that's unique and makes it exciting for me to be able to pick up I guess what makes law and providing legal services fun is when someone comes to you and says, I got this unique issue, and it hasn't been, and then you find out that there hasn't been done before, or there's no clear path forward.
Right.
You have to kind of piece it together based on like things, and that's fun. It's fun and exciting. So
yeah. There's a lot going on, and when you just mentioned that, it made me think of the immigration side of things too, because I know, players are traveling from all over the world to come to teams and play. Right. And I just had a gentleman on yesterday, Roger Caneda, and when Roger was talking about having to put a team together I think he was in Dallas, and then they had to go to Canada, and they weren't prepared for the fact that they were going to Canada, and he was running they were actually based in Phoenix, and he was running to LA just to get all their passports and all the legal documentation that they needed, and they only had a week to do it. And they didn't think they were going to be able to pull it off. And it was a DreamHack event in Montreal, I think.
The requirement to travel to internationally is such a unique and difficult challenge. The immigration issues haven't gotten easier. Yeah. I don't do immigration, but I do know those in the space that do, and they laser focus on that because they need to, because it changes daily. Yeah. So that's definitely unique.
Based on world events or whatever.
Totally, politics to health, everything. Yeah. You have to be on top of it, and plus you think about the ecosystem, the scheduling of Overwatch League is an international league. Unlike anything else, where you can be playing in China one week and Paris, the next, and it's just incredible. There's no other league like it, which brings up its own set of legal challenges, because then you have, how do you have player rights protected? Looking at like a players union, how do you have that on a global scale? I don't even know if that's even possible, but. That's all lawyers like to get together and talk about that stuff. We have an esports bar association, actually, of those who are interested in and are wanting to breaking in. That's a great place to look in terms of like-minded lawyers who are trying to solve these problems, at least to the extent we can, and share some thoughts. And so there's resources out there for even lawyers like me.
Right.
But
but to me, that's when I look at the legal field, I think esports and gaming is just, first of all, so much work there, and so exciting, because like you're saying, there are so many things that have not been explained yet. I mean, that was a great point right there. Overwatch team, and you've got all these teams all over the place. They're traveling all over the world, and what kind of legal issues are you going to run into? Because it's really the first franchise league that is completely international. Across many time zones, and still hasn't been figured out yet. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that this was going to be their big year, right? They were playing in LA for like the last 2 years. Right. This year was going to be all the home series and everything. 2 weeks in, pandemic hits, and Misfits are going to have their first home series, at Full Sail University, and it gets canceled like 2 days before. Yeah. So. Yeah, crazy. So, kind of tying things up, and we could talk for a long time about this, because for me it's a lot of fun. Because I love the stuff that you're doing, and I love how deep attorneys get into things, right? So, I know a lot of stuff on the surface, but when you have to figure something out legally, man, you got to dive deep and dig deep into it, right? So you can explain it all. So I love that fact. But when you mentioned Tfue earlier, and I mentioned I can't remember which one, but you mentioned Twitch. I mentioned the LeBron James with the tattoo. Those are all somewhat current, but what would you say, like in the last maybe month or 2 months, that you've seen that you say, man, this is this is an area where you don't even know the answer. Like something that's really legal out there that's come out, whether it's on, any of the channels, it could be a legal nightmare, or it's just maybe something that's groundbreaking and could change. Is there anything that's happened in the last week or two or three?
For me, we're right now, we're recording in June. July is when the California Attorney General starts enforcing the new California privacy law that just came out.
So you were talking privacy.
Went into effect in January. Okay. So the thing top of mind, not being prepared for that question, I would say I'm waiting to see what happens when with respect to privacy and cybersecurity regulation. I think no one really quite knows how to handle it or what to do. And by I mean nobody, I'm talking like regulators don't really quite know how to handle it. We don't have a consensus at the federal level on how to regulate people's use of data, companies.
And that was like from Facebook and a lot of that,
exactly.
Right?
I mean, Cambridge Analytica scandal is really what set it off. That's what it helped push the GDPR. I mean, it was already in development, but really what got people focused on it. And that's actually very much an influence on the California statute. So California was first to market on a lot of these laws. They were first to market with an online privacy policy law. The first one to have a privacy protection law as it relates to all your data for everywhere. So I don't know where we're going to be in a year from now, how that's going to look, how the regulation is going to, how active are they going to be? Are they going to be, this is a lot about nothing because they're not enforcing anything.
Right.
But the difference here is that people can sue for breaches, at least they have a limited right to sue.
Okay.
That's going to be, in my mind, the kicker. It's going to happen a lot in California, but it's going to impact this industry, I believe. I hope it doesn't impact it too greatly because I love to see the cool, unique things that people do with data that, in a responsible, ethical way, right? We might not have free apps as a result of restricting people's use of data,
right,
if you think about it, because that's how they can monetize it and recoup some of the costs of providing a free service. So how will that look? I don't know. I'm obviously here to find out and work through it, but that's going to be a big question mark for me. And it definitely, I think, impacts this space too.
Yeah. I look at the music industry as having some of that, like what is it, 15, 20 years ago?
Right. How do you deal with Napster?
When Napster came out, it was
same
thing, right?
I mean, it's on the advent of basically the collection and use of our data being so ubiquitous, easy to do, and that is an advent of technological advances like Napster. Yep. So how do we adjust? We'll find out.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
No, I appreciate you having me on.
Good stuff. Thanks. So now we got to just start the coalition.
That's right. That's right. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Steve. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it, bro. I'd like to thank Steve for sharing his time, experience, and knowledge with us today. The legal area of gaming and esports is fascinating to me, and I always appreciate the perspective of attorneys who see the issues, concerns, and challenges from various angles and lenses. Steve brings a long history of passion for gaming into his advice and counsel for both clients and simply those who want more information about the space. And you can feel his enthusiasm for the industry and his desire to make it great. He knows what he's talking about. You can listen to Steve again now, and you can also find timestamp segments of the show, links to the social pages, and more information about his projects and media in the show notes. If you enjoyed our discussion, please let us know. Continue the conversation with me across all social platforms and become part of the Ultimate Gamer community today by subscribing at ultimategamer.com. We release a new show every day of the week, Monday through Friday. So be the first to join us for some outstanding upcoming guests and or dive back into the library of previous All About the Game pods to hear from some of the most brilliant minds in the space. Experts like global scholar practitioner and head of esports at Florida Memorial University, Dr. Mark Williams. President of Media and Branding at Misfits Gaming, Ella Pravitz, and esports talent manager, Chris Toussaint, just to name a few. You can find all these episodes and more on the Ultimate Gamer website, on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your pods. And finally, please like, rate, and review the show. It helps us reach the gaming community to spread the word and share the wisdom of our guests, as well as some of the most thought-provoking stories in the industry. Shout out, as always, to the Ultimate Gamer. I look forward to being with you on the next All About the Game podcast.